week, we are going to talk about some actual new comics that came out, despite the fact that the industry is in a quarantine-related free fall. They've got some digital goodness from DC with Batman. The adventures continue. And then Panel Syndicate has brought us Friday by Ed Brubaker and Marcos Martin. So we're going to get to those reviews here in just a minute. But first of all, news with Scoop Johnson.
I flashed the fancy graphic on there and all that stuff.
Doing a happy dance.
All right. First, we're going to start off with a little bit, I guess, some pandemic-driven type news. And not bad though. Scout Comics is going to join the ranks of self-distribution, which will be done through their website. And as a direct quote from the article is that they will still continue to use their distribution partners once they get up and rolling again. So, there's really, and I kind of try to dig outside of what we published and what we got from them. I couldn't find anything else that was really worth kind of speaking on. So I imagine maybe they'll still continue to do stuff off their website. If maybe if a shop doesn't want to use, Diamond or something like that for whatever reason, Scout still plans to use their website and probably Diamond as well, is what it sounds like.
Well, it sounds to me like, Scout is small enough that I think they can take that sort of a risk.
Yeah.
And
it sounds an awful lot like what Zenescope's doing as well. They never really stopped their distribution. You can buy their books online. Their books are still coming out. It's a little bit different for accessibility, but it sounds a lot like that model.
Hey, whatever gets comics in people's hands, I'm down with.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to actually talk about some comics here. We're going to go over into the world of Kickstarter, and someone that is definitely not new to the whole Kickstarter realm is Jimmy Palmiotti and Dave Johnson. They got what looks to be a really cool new book coming out, which is called, excuse me. Oh, wow, I'm sorry. It's called Pop Kill. I apologize for that. And so basically, the story kind of talks into two brothers that go into the cola business, but they go into backstabbing and kind of mafia type of living to kind of who's the king of cola type deal.
I love it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, once we ran the story, I went on the Kickstarter and kind of looked through it, and they have some really good incentives as far as like there's one where there's only like 250 issues that are going to be produced that's signed by like the whole creative team. There's another incentive to where it's a cover by the almighty Amanda Connor, and that's only going to be produced per backers for that goal. So definitely check it out. There's some really cool stuff that they're doing on there, and I'll always check out paper films and stuff like that, and maybe our interview we did with Jimmy a couple weeks ago. But yeah, that's your thing. Moving on, DC Digital First. What we're going to be talking about here shortly is expanding their line. And I'm just going to run through the titles here really quick because each book has like some have like the Superman and Batman book have like different teams for the stories and stuff like that, because these were originally from the Walmart, the DC Giant books. So they're kind of redoing those. But you have Superman, the Man of Tomorrow, Batman, Gotham Knights, Wonder Woman, Agent of Peace, Aquaman, Deep Dives, Flash, Fastest Man Alive, DC Superhero Girls, Infinite Frenemies, and Swamp Thing New Roots. So definitely check those books out. Those look really good. And we are going to wrap up the news with something that is really, really cool. Looking forward to this. The graphic novel Philadelphia Sins of the Father just got picked up into a TV series by Levantine Films. They are, excuse me, they directed Blinded by the Light, I'm sorry, Gurinder Chadha, a screenwriter and producer who's did the Boondocks. They did Everyone Hates Chris. So they got some really good titles behind his resume as well. And the really cool thing is Jason Sean Alexander is going to co-produce the show.
Cool.
So that I know, right, Nick? Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's gonna be good.
So cool.
Yeah. So that's going to be really cool.
You did at least a couple of reviews on the series itself for the site, right? What did you think about it?
I did.
Yeah, I did the first review, and then the first issue, and then I think Mike took over. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Philadelphia is really good. And I I'm not gonna lie, I was just on it originally just for Jason, out for obvious reasons, right? And then after issue 2, I just kind of was like, I'll stay on. And then when I took over the reviews, I was like, yeah, this is really good stuff. This was really good. So, and it's one of those stories to where, yeah, okay, we've done the vampire and the zombie stories, but it's like a hamburger, right? You can either make a plain hamburger, or you can make a really good hamburger with seasoning and different kind of toppings and other shit like that. Pardon my French, kids. And that's what Philadelphia is. Philadelphia is that familiar zombie vampire story, but it's seasoned well, and it tells a really good story, and highly recommended for sure. Yeah, and that's the news. Unless you gentlemen have anything other, I got the.
If we haven't gone over it yet, Todd McFarlane dropped his new first time ever Kickstarter for the Spawn action figure. Gotta talk about that a little bit. Super excited. He had original goal of 100,000, and I just looked it up, and he's at 1.8 million now. This action figure, you can get the classic version, big spiky boots, or you can get the modern version. That kind of Alexander himself helped to define. Now with all the pledges, there's all these different kind of ads with different guns, different hands. That's all coming with it. Super excited for McFarlane to kind of dive into that Kickstarter realm. I know that there's this rumor that's been circulating that he might kickstart the Spawn movie if he doesn't get the funding that he wants. So it's interesting to see this as almost a test to see what kind of audience is at Kickstarter for McFarlane and Spawn, and it looks to be pretty great.
Yeah, if he does kickstart,
it's there.
Yeah. And I'm gonna tell you, if he does kickstart the movie, I can just mail him my Amex card, and he can just swipe it. Todd, I trust you in your judgment. I'm good.
It's probably just an obscure rumor that people kind of throw around, but it was cool to see happen.
That's awesome. And then I believe this coming week we've got actual new comics coming out from DC, right? Now it's pretty limited. I think it's only 6 books.
6 books, yeah.
6.
And I don't think there's really. I think it's just some retellings. I don't think it's
one of them is a third printing of Batman '89. I know that, and I think there's a oh gosh, what is it called? Another one. They're fancy schmancy reprints of the classic comics. I just went blank on what they're called.
Yeah, that's what I was. Here, let me.
You knew what I mean. But those are coming, and I don't think I've read anything else about any of the other major publishers putting out any content next week.
Not that I know of. It's mainly smaller publishers that are still kind of releasing or trickling stuff out, if at all.
What's kind of interesting about this is DC's been a little vague about how they're actually going to get these comics in fans' hands, considering so many comic stores are still shut down. They said in their original press release that they did a survey of 2,000 comic stores and determined that enough of, quote unquote, enough of them had come up with innovative ways to sell product to customers that they felt justified. Now, obviously, that justification is hedged a little bit since it's only 6 comics that are coming out, but it's an interesting experiment, and it's a first baby step towards a return to normalcy for comics. So. Yeah. Heck yeah. Looks like we're having an all DC show next week, whether we want it or not.
It's true.
So I guess that wraps up the news of the week. Yep. And Scoop's giving me the okay nod, so I'm right. I didn't second guess him. So let's dig into some reviews, gentlemen. I'd like to start us off, first of all, with Friday, #1. It came digitally from Panel Syndicate. It's written by Ed Brubaker, art by Marcos Martin, and coloring by Munza Vicente. I had to make sure I got that name right before I spat it out there. So this is Ed Brubaker's take on the teen detective, kind of young adult novel, Harriet the Spy, and Encyclopedia Brown genre. Friday Fitzhugh is a college, I believe she's supposed to be a freshman, although it doesn't explicitly say, who's coming home to for the first time to Kings Hill, her old town, and she has been summoned, more or less, by an old friend with whom she apparently used to solve mysteries with, and she kind of wants to get away from that lifestyle, but mystery beckons. So, gentlemen, this book was pay what you want for it, which was really awesome. Kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily a first in the comics industry, but still awesome to have that option. What did you guys think?
Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I really was excited that we picked the books that we did. Friday is an awesome example of really what I've been reading the past month in these quarantine days with, heavily indie books. And this was something that I really didn't expect to enjoy so much. I didn't know a lot about it going in, but I really loved the Panel Syndicate platform that you actually access the book on. I could take a minute to talk about that just because it kind of blew me away. The whole pay what you want aspect is really interesting. It kind of does give you that indie vibe that, this art is just out there that you can get, take what you want or, leave what you can. And I was super enthused at the fact that the comic industry is evolving and adapting in ways like this and getting comics available with like big names. This is Brubaker. We talked on the last show, like my first comic basically I dove into was Brubaker's Cap. And like seeing an indie book like this come together, I was just kind of excited to see what it was and like navigating to it and downloading it and kind of getting the PDF that is, there's no like additional security enhancements or anything like that. It's just a PDF file and really, really cool. But the book itself had some Mignola vibes, and anything like that is just going to pull me right into it. So I'm here for issue 2 already. There's the Lovecraftian vibe. There's a bit of this coming of age story with Friday that I think helps give it some good character development. But really, it's kind of that horror angle that I really want to see more of. And I think Friday does a good job at like presenting this mystery of these kids. There's a lot of drama going on with like their dynamics and their interactions, but ultimately it's kind of what they're going after. And like, I guess the conflict at hand is this horror in the woods, the white lady. And I think that's where the Mignola vibes come from, even in the artwork. Like there's just a lot of that where it feels like kind of like a Hellboy story. And I think that is like, I was reading it and I was like, I did not see this coming at all. Like for Brubaker to pull something off like this, I think just really shows that the guy's just a veteran. Like,
well, Fatale had a really strong horror vibe. It's sheer Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
If you haven't read that, have you?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so yeah, you, sir, definitely need to check out Fatale.
Oh my gosh, like, there's so much to check out.
We could. Let me add to your to-do list.
Right.
Like write that down.
Also everything by Brubaker and Phillips.
Yeah.
Go on.
I think this was one of those books that, gets added onto the reading list because it's like, here, check this out. And, you go through it thinking you're going to pull some cool stuff out of it. But as just a fan, I'm coming back for issue 2. We're not talking about issue 2. Maybe I'm still reading it. Like, this is something that I think a lot of horror fans are going to like. And it's not overt horror. This is not gore. It's not like torture porn or anything like that. This is kind of like it's a little bit more nuanced than the horror approach. And that's why I use Lovecraftian, because it's not just in your face with everything. And I think that mystery is where it's going to really like find its best success and over these next issues develop really interestingly. But
yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Mike, what did you think?
I mean, most of what I'm going to say is going to piggyback off of what Nick already kind of touched on. I mean, this was, I don't know if you guys may or may not be familiar with Veronica Mars, but this is kind of like a Veronica Mars meets Lovecraft type deal, because this is I mean, it's detective-y, it has, I mean, this, like, I was waiting for Cthulhu to like jump out of like a mine shaft or something like that, right? No, this book was great. I mean, you know, Marcos Martin is awesome on art. I love him when he was doing Spidey stuff. But I found myself rereading this book time and time again since I've had it in, you know, the few days, where I want to know more about Friday, because there's so much left. Obviously, we're just in issue 1, and I'm way overthinking it probably, but it's just such a good book. But you know, in the book, she hints on, you know, that day, that night before she left for college. You know, like, what happened? You know, why is Lancelot still head on to this whole detective and hunting down stuff, where she went off to college probably that first semester, and now she's changed? Or is she changed? Or, you know, what exactly happened? And that's, I just literally, and I found myself, okay, when she saw, you know, just going through Easter eggs, you know, where she saw, she thought she saw a female form in the forest. Well, Marcos Martin had like a veiled, you know, outline in one panel, and then the next panel that veiled outline wasn't there. You know, certain stuff like that. And I just, every time I look at the sheriff, you know, I'm like, I cannot stop thinking, like, he's looking at Lancelot and going, why did this kid bring me out here again? You know, it's snowing, I'm in the forest, in the woods. What is this kid doing? You know, and you see Friday at this, you know, she's just like, I just want to talk. You know, I just got back into town. I don't want to do this stuff again. But yeah, no, this is good horror. This is good detective horror. Like Nick said, it's not, you know, gore. You know, Art the Clown's not coming out, and you know, stabbing folks. No, you know, nothing like that. But definitely waiting for issue 2. And I'm going to touch on a point real quick before I pass it over to Matt. For any of you that are still screaming at the clouds about digital comics, read Friday. And if this doesn't change your mind about digital comics, you know, I'm just sorry, because this is one hell of a book that's probably not going to see print, and it's a great book that you're going to miss out on because you're bypass. I love the hard copies. I still buy CDs and records. I get that draw to it. But this is one hell of a digital book. Brubaker and Martin are just a great team. And yeah, I mean, Nick already said everything that I wanted to say. We didn't plan that. It just kind of worked out that way, I promise. But what'd you think about it, Matt?
Well, I think it probably goes without saying that I loved this book. It's Ed Brubaker, so that's almost a given. I don't want to say he walks on water or anything, but he's pretty darn close to doggy paddling. So, but Nick, you brought up Mike Mignola, and that hadn't occurred to me. And I think that's an awesome point. I actually caught a lot of Steve Niles vibes off of it. He's really good at doing that subtle horror type stuff. You know, that like you're saying, Mike, not in your face, not slasher films or anything like that, but just more of atmosphere and leaving you feeling unsettled or disquieted in some way. And combine that with Marcos Martin's art, which I have to admit, like, being primarily familiar with him from his Marvel work on Spider-Man, this was awesome. I mean, I already knew he was an awesome artist, but this is just total next level stuff. Everything is really moody. The way that, and bears mentioning, the entire issue takes place at night, and it's, the landscape is covered in snow. So you have this constant light and dark juxtaposition going on with the visuals that creates a really, really awesome effect. And like Mike was saying, if you're not sold on digital comics yet, and this comic doesn't do it for you, I just don't know why you're reading comics. Because this is awesome next level stuff. And there's
Really good.
Yes, it's really good. Now,
Yeah.
Mike mentioned the tension between her and her friend Lancelot Jones coming back into town, and I really liked that clever, kind of just beneath the surface dynamic between them, where you've got this one friend that's gone on out in the world and has embarked on a new life, and then you've got her older friend who stayed home and is right where she left him. And the dynamic by necessity has to be different. But Lancelot Jones, which is just an awesome name, he doesn't seem to understand that. When he first sees Friday, it's not, "Hey, how are you? How have you been? How's college?" It's, "Hey, mystery, let's go. Let's do this." And, Friday, despite her misgivings, kind of reluctantly falls back into that role, whether she wants to or not. And I just really like that commentary that Brubaker had on that type of relationship and that type of situation. I'm really eager to see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was kind of the dynamic that you immediately latch onto in these characters, and kind of that back and forth between these two. And I think we had talked about it some in our chat before coming on, that there was like a sidekick exploration happening. The point of view happens from, not like the main person heading onto this mission or this detective. It's kind of the person who fell into it as almost a sidekick role. And that opens up a whole new perspective.
Yeah. You just feel like she's just, like I said earlier, you just feel almost like her sadness, her wanting, kind of fix whatever is apparently could be wrong or whatever, and to pick up in a different place. But like Nick said, she just comes back, "Oh, it's same old," and then she has to walk home. She has to call mom for a ride at the end of the day. It's like, what the hell? Like, that's so shitty. Like, welcome back, Cotter. By the way, grab an Uber. Sorry. It's horrible.
So, guys, any final thoughts?
No,
read this book. Yeah, go to Panel Syndicate.
Absolutely. Panelsyndicate.com. It's by Ed Brubaker and Marcos Martin. You absolutely cannot go wrong, especially when you can pay what you can afford. So do it. All right. Well, second book of the evening. We are diving into Batman: The Adventures Continue, numbers 1 and 2, written by Alan Burnett and Paul Dini, art by Ty Templeton, and cover by Dave Johnson. Guys, this comic is just comfort food in the best possible way. It dives right into that old Batman Taz tapestry and dynamic and feel. And we've got Batman, we've got giant robots, we've got Lex Luthor, of all people. We've got a mystery man lurking in the shadows, a potential femme fatale, or maybe just a girlfriend of the week for bored Playboy Bruce Wayne. But this is Batman, the animated series, continued, picking up right where it left off. And for fans of a particular vintage, that is exactly what the doctor ordered right now. I don't think during these unsettled times there is anything at all wrong with just wallowing in sheer nostalgia, especially when it's done so well. So, Mike, what did you think first of DC Digital's Batman Adventures Continue?
This was great. I heard the theme. I was eating Fruit Loops in front of my TV again. This was marvelous. Veronica's back as you kind of maybe gave that introduction. But this is good. This is, like you said, it's comfort food. But even if we weren't in this situation that the world's in right now, I still think these books would still be talked about, because they're just good books. They're fun books, and it just takes you. It kind of one, it takes you back, but two, it kind of gets you forward a little bit. It carries on, those stories that we wanted. With Veronica talk about, oh, did you adopt another son? Just good, goofy stuff like that. And I don't want to spoil anything, but especially with the end, with who's controlling the robot. Okay, I got it. That was cool. And at the end, he really is a Boy Scout. That's what these books needed to be in this time. Nothing too serious, nothing to where, I mean, you're gonna read them a couple times because it's it's an animated series. Why not? But it's not like you're sitting here and you're not dissecting anything, because everything is literally right there, right? It's like going to Golden Corral. Everything is right there. All you got to do is eat it, ingest it, take it in, wear the stretchy pants, go home. And that's what these books are. It was fun. The art was literally looking at the TV. The writing was, like I said, the writing was just as goofy as the show. Definitely worth it. Once again, like we talked about earlier, if you're not into digital, you're missing out on a good book. It's fun, not to be taken too seriously, and it's definitely kind of takes care of that urge, for sure. Definitely read it. It's a good book.
Nick, what'd you think?
Definitely. Before I kind of go off on this tangent, it is part of the DC Digital First program, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it is part of that, because really these books, once again, this show sets up an awesome dichotomy with Friday and these Batman Adventures Continue. Both of these are digital comics, pushing kind of what comics are going to, what they're going to become. One book is totally original in all this new indie style, this vibe, highly stylized. And then, as Matt so expertly put, the next one in Batman wallows in nostalgia. And I think you need both of these. I think this is what comics is. I'm either reading these indie books that are pushing boundaries, or I'm going to superheroes that I have nostalgia with. And to kind of get our fill of both of these right now, I think it's an awesome depiction of what the industry is doing and kind of what they're going to still get comics to people, but almost in a way to centralize or focus the lineup to make sure it's hitting very specific things. And yeah, who doesn't want to see a continuation of the animated series? It's one of DC's most popular projects. I mean, everybody knows this. And it's a digital first comic. I think the whole idea of a digital first comic, I think, is to reach newer readers. And this is an IP that holds significant value of not just being Batman, but being part of this animated project that people who don't read Batman comics know this Batman. And you're reading it in Kevin Conroy's voice. You're might say you're hearing the theme song. I think it's touching on a lot of these aspects, and it's obviously doing it on purpose. They've got Dini involved in the writing. We all know what's going on here, and
right.
That's why it's so good. That's why you want to read it. It's not trying to do what Friday's doing and pushing these boundaries or telling this wholesome, unique story that kind of brings a new flair to comics. It's doing something else entirely that I think has a niche in comics really, really strong in nostalgia-driven products and reading. And I think it's kind of showing that DC is able to navigate these waters arguably better than some of the other companies and putting these products to their readers and kind of getting it in front of them in a way that this is comfort food. And right now we need comfort food. This is something that I was looking forward to reading, because it's not something that requires dozens of issues to read and a lot of in-depth reading. It's a lot of fun, and I think it's found a nice place in comics to do something really cool. Who wouldn't be interested in this book?
And I think this comic is just wonderful. I'll just say that right off the bat. But it's more than, like you're saying, Nick, it's more than just an exercise in nostalgia or trying to milk Gen X money or anything like that. But in terms of execution, I mean, it's a really straightforward story. Batman starts off with Batman fighting a giant 1940s style robot straight out of a Max Fleischer cartoon. And I mean, the plot doesn't get terribly more intricate beyond that. And that's great. You know, I don't need to have read 80 other comics to understand what's going on here. Anyone can just sit down and enjoy this as long as you have a basic understanding of who Batman is, which I think even like my grandma does, I presume at this point. But I mean, I hope so. She's at least cognizant. You know, she's almost 90, but she could sit down and read this. And,
can we get her on the phone really quick?
we do it. No, I don't want to bother her.
Yeah. Who's Batman?
I was just talking to her yesterday. There was bad weather in her area.
But it is a great point as far as just like accessibility for these books. I mean, like I said, who's not gonna know what this book is? You don't need all those decades of Batman comics that are out to enjoy it. And
it's, you know, getting Paul Dini back and Alan Burnett, who is one of the main writers on Taz, and then Ty Templeton, who drew the adaptation of the show in the 90s, which was written by Kelly Puckett. Getting him on style, and you know, he's just dead on with the Bruce Timm style. Mm-hmm. So that's an added bonus to have him along as well. But I mean, there's not just a heck of a lot to say about this other than it's unfussy, straight ahead fun. And if you can't appreciate that, I mean, if maybe this isn't your thing, well, you know, it's not your thing, but it's very well put together. And there's a nice little hanger at the end of issue 2 that sets up the next story, bigger and better, possibly more Gotham and Lex Luthor dropping by for a visit. But it's good stuff. And I think we are, like Nick was saying, really lucky right now to have these two very different examples of what a digital comic can be and what the medium can be, because we don't know what the industry is going to look like, you know, when the current crisis is over. And you know, I'm sure, I hate to say this, there's going to be a lot of LCSs that have to close the doors, and that's terrible. So that, I mean, for the industry to not only rebound, but to flourish into something new, especially since the cracks in the system, i.e. Diamond, were, you know, vastly exposed by this crisis, it has to become something new. And digital comics themselves aren't new, they're not the only solution, but they're one answer out of many for what the industry needs to become in order to successfully move forward. So that's kind of why I'm glad, like Nick was saying, I'm glad that we got these two very different digital books for the show this week, because it just goes to show what all's out there. And just because new comics aren't shipping to the comic store right now, there's still plenty of good stuff to be had.
Yeah, and sure, they're new stories too. Like these aren't books that we're digging around in the back issues trying to find.
No. Look, like, with Friday, I want this project to succeed. I had no problem dropping $10 for that. So JJ, who used to be on the show, of course, he told me he dropped $20. I mean, and we can't be the only fans with that sort of mindset.
Yeah,
so
that's great. I thought I was paid $5, and I was just like, oh man, like it's just kind of what I love the whole idea of kind of leave what you can. And
yeah, well, and also on a side note, since we're kind of still talking about Panel Syndicate and all that stuff, Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin have a book on there. I believe it's called Barrier. That I picked up. Yeah. They have different options. I bought the option where you can get 1 through 5 collected, but they also have the option where you could get just single, the single option, and it's still pay what you want, So skim through it a little bit, and it looks really rad. So I'm looking forward to digging into that as well.
Awesome, yeah. We've been starved of Brian K. Vaughan of late since Saga's been on hiatus and Paper Girls wrapped up. So go out and get that. Damn it, when's Saga coming back? Brian K. Vaughan, I'm yelling into the void to you. And Fiona Staples too.
Yeah.
All right. Damn it.
I do have one question about this Batman book before we leave. I don't want to spoil too much, but is there a particular Robin that's showing up in this who maybe didn't last too long as Robin?
See, that I had that same question in the like the first half of the first book, I believe, right? In the shadows, where someone's waiting in the shadows.
Oh, yeah, I think we were all thinking it. Oh, it's Jason Todd.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'll definitely be back for the next stuff.
Oh, for sure. Most definitely. So, all right. Well, that was Friday from Panel Syndicate by Ed Brubaker and Marcos Martin, and Batman: The Adventures Continue from DC Digital by Alan Burnett, Paul Dini, and Ty Templeton. Those are our books this week. So, gentlemen, since we're actually having a kind of traditional show this week, I guess it's time for what have you been reading? What are you looking forward to? Uno, dos, tres. Nick, you're up first.
Okay, so I guess I haven't gotten a chance to talk about it. When everything started,
the Valiant comment, then the show's over with.
There'll be no Valiant talk.
I wasn't going to, but now I'm going to talk about Valiant. So what you need to be reading at Valiant. No, I've actually been finally digging into Planetary. And this is something that I guess that, I was very behind on. I haven't read a lot of Wildstorm, but our old previous guest member here, I guess the host Cody, assured me that I didn't need to read tons of other Wildstorm, that I could just read this. And I'm probably about halfway through it. I'm working my way through individual reviews at Comic Watch. You can check out and kind of follow along with me through my first time reading it. Warren Ellis, John Cassaday, just crazy good work here. This is like, when you feel like you're reading something or experiencing something epic for the first time, I know that this is a book that I'll finish all of these issues and I'll be able to go back immediately and probably pick up just as much depth of things that I didn't get the first time. I'm feeling that reading through it now. Like when I put out a review,
the big finale.
Yeah, it's, oh my gosh, it really is kind of like superhero storytelling at its finest. I mean, and I'm only about halfway through it. It's so layered and kind of complex, but not like standoffish or intimidating. It's super easy to get into. Can't recommend it enough, and I'm not even done with it. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And a lot of people are afraid to like talk to me about it because all of the spoilers that I guess start to come together at the end. There's a lot of one-shot issues at the start, and that
mostly one-shot issues. The whole series.
Really, it never gets out of that. I had heard that it kind of falls out of that and gets more into like a more tied narrative.
Well, yes and no. What starts to happen is that all these one-off issues, you start to see the bigger story that ties them all together. As it moves into the third act.
Yeah. And
it's
starting to happen now. We've got like the 4 have happened, and we're seeing a lot more with the Snowflake and the Bleed. There's a lot of these things that are it's starting to set up a story where there's something with Jaquita happening and Elijah Snow is on it. And I'm kind of in that mode where he's starting to piece together things, and goodness, it's so good.
Yes. I'm jealous that you're getting to read this for the first time because it's quite amazing. And I'm also not jealous because you get to read it without the ridiculous delays that came between some of the issues.
I heard they were crazy.
There was something like 2 years between issues 14 and 15, 3 years between the final 2 issues. And actually what's funny about that is the way the penultimate issue, number 26, reads.
Yeah.
I just assumed that was the end of the series. So 3 years later, when they're like, by the way, Warren Ellis and Cassidy are finally wrapping this thing up, I was like, wait, what?
Oh my god.
But that book is so worth it. And it came out at this really interesting time in comics history, you know, not just at Wildstorm, where you had that and The Authority, both incidentally or actually not coincidentally by Warren Ellis, completely redefining the Watchmen universe. But you had Alan Moore's ABC Comics came out at that time. Vertigo was still at the height of its powers. Marvel was on the cusp. They were still a couple years away, but they were getting really close to the Joe Quesada taking over everything era. EC was doing just fantastic bodies of work around this time. Like, the whole industry was so strong, and Planetary is like this comic that could have only come out then, when every facet of the industry was firing on all cylinders.
Nice. That's really cool, because it's kind of a meta exploration of the industry too. You can see how it breaks down those components.
Oh yeah, that. I mean, Victorian literature, sci-fi tropes, folklore,
the superhero archetypes that it kind of like.
Sci-fi B movies with giant ants.
Yeah.
Just everything under the sun falls in here, and yeah, superheroes are merely a part of it. Yeah. So, sorry, I kind of got really sidetracked. I could do a whole episode talking about Planetary when you're done with it.
Right. It's got a crazy following. I had no idea. I was kind of oblivious to this, you know, as embarrassed as I am to say it, and finally just dove right in, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, totally. So, what are you looking forward to reading?
Goodness, I'm really not even sure, like, you know, what kind of schedule we're looking at for coming out. Honestly, I'm looking forward to getting to the next arc of, I'm reading Empty Zone. Went back to the Jason Sean Alexander indie series that he did with Image, and he does the writing and the artwork on this one, and it is wild. One of the last issues I just read had like 11 pages of dialogue-free interior art, and it's such a crazy horror sci-fi story. I'm super excited. I've got like my veggies with Planetary, and then dessert with Empty Zone, and that's kind of how I've been approaching a lot of this stuff right now. And Empty Zone's what I'm looking forward to.
Nice. Well, Mike, what have you been reading?
Excuse me. Carrying over from our last show, reread Mutant Massacre. Still rocking through some volume 1 of Hellboy and stuff like that. Just kind of just going through some stuff, and just really visiting stuff that I haven't read in a while. Maybe I won't say forgotten about, but just stuff that you read a few times, you kind of file away, and you're like, oh hey, wait a second. And you just find yourself just kind of sitting in front of boxes and pulling stuff out, and next thing you know, you're reading on the floor, or you're just grabbing a stack of comics and heading downstairs and stuff like that, and sitting on the couch. So that's what I've been going reading now. Recently started. Let me pull this up here. Since we're talking about digital comics, I don't know if we're going to try to grab that cover right here. Is Ask for Mercy, which is a Comixology original. That is from Rich Starkings of Elephant Men and Comic Craft fame, stuff like that. Excuse me. Basically, this came out a couple years ago. Let me see, 2018, I believe so. With Abigail Jill Harding cutting her teeth on this book. She actually did some work with Rich on Elephant Men a while back as well. But anyway, this is a World War II sci-fi horror type of book, which I just kind of was looking through some Comixology originals, and was just kind of flipping through stuff and really just kind of spinning the wheel and seeing what kind of landed. And I saw this, and basically it's about this realtor set in London, obviously, right, with anything that Rich does. And I say that in a nice way. I don't say that in a snarky way. But So her name's Mercy, obviously, and she's a realtor in London, and she always every time she's hanging up the phone or something, she's always, ask for mercy when she's trying to sell these upscale houses. So anyway, she is kind of snatched from her current world, and she goes through this gate, and she is finds herself with a team of monster hunters that are actually monsters themselves, and she finds herself kind of in this hideous battle with these monsters who are basically like evil Nazis type of deal. And
there's no thing as a non-evil Nazi.
Exactly. Thanks for clarifying that. I'm sure the fan mail after this show airs is going to be marvelous on my account. Oh, God.
They're not very fine people, despite what you may have heard.
Yeah. Derek, if you could edit this last couple of seconds out, that'd be great.
Why are you trying to edit it?
Good night. See everyone next week. But anyway, all Nazis are evil. But yeah, so this book is really good. It has a bit of a Sandman feel to it. But I say that in a nod. I don't say that in a way or copycat way. There's just parts I think it reads like in a homage into that type of book, which is really good. So yeah, Ask for Mercy. So I'm about halfway. What am I on? Issue 3, issue 4 right now. But it's pretty good. It's definitely worth a try.
Awesome. So what are you looking forward to reading? And I guess are slimmed down next week, it can be maybe something out of your personal collection.
Oh, it is actually. Have a stack of Tim Seeley's Evil Ernie that we're going to. What's that?
I never knew that he'd written Evil Ernie.
Yeah, that was a while ago. God, was it before 2010? Let me double check.
While you look at that, if I could plug in a recommendation here.
Totally.
There is Tim Seeley did a hack slash versus Evil Ernie that was really cool. Like it does a lot of the crossovers with like horror characters, and the Evil Ernie one I was even like, okay, this is cool.
Looks like like 2014, long time. He did it a while back. Yeah, I know he did long time. And then I got I got some Sam Keith doing some Hulk and Wolverine. Big Sam Keith fan. So I find myself just kind of going through his stuff just for art, and sometimes it's not great, but it's still Sam Keith, and I think he does a really great job on Wolverine's one of my favorite Wolverine artists. So yeah, doing some Tim Seeley and some Sam Keith.
Dude, that's awesome. So for me, to follow what from last week, I am still just deep diving into all things X-Men. Last week I mentioned Uncanny X-Force by Remender and Uncanny Avengers also by Remender. So I followed that up with Wolverine and the X-Men by Jason Aaron, which I will fight anybody that was the best X-Men book of the entire last decade, period. Oh, this book completely encapsulates the essence of the X-Men in a pretty damn flawless package. It really does. If you haven't read Wolverine and the X-Men by Jason Aaron, really, really need to. The only thing you need to know going into it is it takes place right after the Schism miniseries, which saw the X-Men divide into two factions, one led by Cyclops, the other by Wolverine. This follows the Wolverine side of things, where he starts up the school again and tries to somehow be Wolverine and also teach children how to be good mutants. So it's great. Absolutely great. Some of the artistic talent along the way, Chris Bacalo, Nick Bradshaw. This was kind of his big coming out party. Not Mahmoud Asrar. He was on the next volume. Somebody else similar to him. Anyway, really, really strong stuff. So definitely worth checking out. I think after I'm done with this, I'm going to probably dive back into, what was the name of that crossover? Messiah Complex. which yeah,
Very
that
nice.
that I
Very
wish
nice.
Brock was here for that conversation. Maybe we'll bring it up live on Saturday. But that's a hell of a good crossover. What am I looking forward to? Well, DC is finally releasing this week a collection of Tales of the Batman by Steve Englehart. So this collects first of all, most people know the brief Steve Englehart era of Batman from the mid 70s when he worked with Marshall Rogers and Terry Austin. Okay, they did the Laughing Fish story. They introduced Silver St. Cloud, Boss Thorne. They brought Hugo Strange back and quickly killed him, and he became a ghost. And they gave us probably most importantly, they gave us Deadshot as we know him and love him. So everybody reveres those 6 issues, but what hasn't ever been collected before is on the before and a little bit after those issues, Englehart had some other issues in his run that nobody just ever really talks about because it didn't have Rogers and Austin on the art. So this is the first time all of those issues have been collected together. I've really been looking forward to it. It was originally announced for release like back in January or something like that, maybe even December, and I pre-ordered it last fall. So I've been really waiting for this book for a long damn time.
That's worse than trying to order toilet paper right now.
The threat is real.
God.
The threat is real. So that's what I'm mostly looking forward to. That and just deep diving into more X-Men. I've got more X-Men comics than probably anything else in my collection if you bunch them all together.
Ooh.
And X-Men just gives me the feels. So they're my first love. They'll probably be my last love on my deathbed someday. So yeah, that's it for me. Well, guys, do we have any? Oh, Nick, you have something?
Yes, I want to plug a book that I am looking forward to reading. It just came out on the Comixology Originals. We've got a review on it, but I haven't gotten a chance to dig in. It's Lost on Planet Earth, and it's kind of a new sci-fi book from Mags Visaggio and Claudia Aguirre. Man, this one looks cool. Like I'm really excited to dig into this one. They said the review that we had on Comic Watch, I believe Duna did it, that said it was like super interesting, super gay, super here for it. So I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Super interesting, super gay, super here for it. I love it.
If there was ever a T-shirt that we should make, it's that one.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. So, well, guys, I guess that's it for this episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I want to go ahead and plug in advance that this coming Saturday, the 25th at 2 p.m. Central, the show will be live on YouTube, and we're going to be talking all things indie comics, our favorite indie comics, where to jump in, what is an indie comic? No, we're probably not going to get into that. Those are some weeds. But we hope that everybody jumps in, drop some comments, bring your friends, bring your families, bring your pets, and we'll see you then. But till that time, thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Matt. This is Nick. This is Mike. This has been Comic Watchers Show, episode 78, brought to you by comic-watch.com. Till next time.